What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anez and Levine Accident Attorneys. Feels good. Feels good to be back in the studio with a win. Feels good to have a familiar face back in the room with me, fresh from Italy, the man himself, the people's champ, Peter Ariz. Get in here, Pete. Hop in. How you feeling?
I'm good, man. Battling this jet lag, but it's still early enough in the day that I'm not feeling it just yet. So excited to be back here in studio. As always, Anez and Levine show brought to you by them. D, if you want to do your spot there.
Oh, I was trying to let you talk a little bit, but we'll do the spot. We'll come back. Anez and Levine in Florida. No one is better. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. So you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, call that number. You could be entitled to significant compensation. Take back control of your life. Anez and Levine, they don't get paid till you get paid. All right, now hop back in, Pete, here. Italy, you saw Rome. I guess you're talking to you, your analysis of Rome is that it is an old city. Do you have any other deeper thoughts about the country of Italy?
Need more air condition. That's all I have to say. Need more AC. I can't do no AC, and it's hot over there right now. But good place, good food. Florence I liked a lot. Tuscany was very nice, but yeah, man, need more consistent air conditioning in that country. Yeah. And the thing that sucked for me was I'm a big soccer guy, and they were on international break, so there was no club matches going on. The Italian national team played in France while I was over there. So, there's a few of these international breaks a year. Of course, I was there for 11 days, and I'm there during one of the 2-week stretches that there's no soccer being played. So that's just my luck, right? But it was a great trip.
Well, listen, your luck with soccer might not have been there, but luck with football continues to go. I was at the game. A lot of people asking for you. And a lot of people happy with the result. Of course, Canes absolutely destroyed Ball State. My prediction was horrible. We're going to rechart that prediction chart based on success, and me and Trenton Breeze will be at the bottom. I will be at the absolute bottom after being on the top last week. I thought it would be a close game. I have some MAC trauma from all those years we played these guys close. After MAC beat Notre Dame, almost beat Penn State. It was all for naught. Miami just completely dominated this game. I did a post-game show, which you guys can check out on the YouTube channel if you haven't seen it yet, or on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcast. But Pete, what are some of your thoughts now, having watched the game, watched some of the highlights again, and just digested what happened?
Man, the backups, there really wasn't much of a drop-off in terms of the production. Of course, Ball State was rotating guys at that point of the game as well, but this is an FBS team. Obviously, one of the worst FBS teams in the country, but man, you just see the way these guys were playing until the final whistle of the game, how hard they were running around. Just not just how hard the effort was, right? It was just like the guys who were playing, you see, have the ability, right? They have you're going deep into the depth chart there, and there's just a lot of guys that can play all over this roster. So for me, look, we're seeing the Florida win as the year goes on may not look as nice as it did when it happened. Obviously, you can never take away what happened week 1 in the swamp. Both teams were 0-0, and it was a long off season. But I think that regardless of the fact that win may not mean much, the way that Miami's won these 3 games, and it looks like they're like these teams in the past, D, when they've gone on a little run and then their confidence gets a little too high and they take someone lightly. It does not seem like that's necessarily the case with this team. I think that these guys are wired a little bit differently. And instead of them getting a taste of success and feeling like, well, we've accomplished everything, it's like them getting at least what it looks like watching these games. It's like they want more. Right. So obviously big test this weekend up in Tampa. We'll get into that as the week goes on. But I mean, it was nice to see them handle business the way that they did on Saturday night. And look, it was very easy to say, well, the rain was what it was, the delay in the game, all these different factors. It was Ball State that you could have said, well, they're not going to bring their best stuff. And they certainly did that.
Yeah, and look at the old teams. The talent of the second unit overwhelmed these bad teams, and the energy and aggression of the second unit overwhelmed teams. And that's what you saw, which has not been the case. A lot of times you don't get to those guys until later because the first team kind of plays with their food a little bit. So you get these guys in the fourth quarter for a couple drives, and you wish you saw them more. Here you saw them for extended periods of time, and they were out there, like you said, competing, aggressive, pushing the pile, gang tackling. It was just a totally different mindset from this ball club, which to me was just outstanding to see. Now we got the post-game pressers today. Pete, we got some news from Mario. Really, the only negative of the game was that Anez Cooper got rolled up on his ankle, was working on the bike. It didn't look too serious, but obviously you don't want to see one of your best players wearing a boot at the end of the game. But Mario had an update on both Anez Cooper and Jalen Rivers, who's missed the last couple.
Yeah, and as we see here, I'm pulling up the tweet now. I wasn't able to grab the video, but Mario did say that Anez and Jalen Rivers will be available for this game. He had mentioned it this morning on Joe Rosdy that they would be available. He wasn't really clear at that point when they would be coming back, right? He said they'll be available soon, and then today in the afternoon he confirmed that they would be ready for this Saturday, which is obviously big news. I mean, it's great that Rivers has been able to rest a bit these last couple weeks here, and even more importantly to me, get Markel Bell some really, really valuable experience early in the season here, because he's a guy we're both excited about, but obviously he continues to need reps to get to the level that the coaching staff expects of him. And you don't want that to have to come out of necessity in the middle of the season without him having adjusted to any sort of game speed outside of practice. So to me, that was big. Obviously, you know, there's been a lot of guys rotating around that offensive line in general, but I think that was big. But number one, Anez Cooper, because it looked pretty ugly the other day. For him to be able to be available this weekend, it would be massive. And obviously, Coach Griswold says he is. And listen, in the past, I would say I'm skeptical because I don't think Mario likes to give much out in terms of, you know, guys playing and not playing. But most recently, he said Mark Fletcher was playing and Mark Fletcher was good to go. And that's, you know, shown to be the case in a big way. So I'm going to trust Mario on this one.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is that Markel Bell's been deemed to be the 6th best offensive lineman. You obviously got 3 major impact guys with Cooper, Mao, and Noah, and Rivers. You want to get 2 of those guys back. Zach Carpenter is playing at a much higher level than people expected. You see him getting out on some of those screens. He looks pretty quick out there, honestly quicker than I thought. He's not quite as quick as Matt Lee, but he's getting out there and getting to blocks. So I'm impressed with his athleticism early on. Obviously, the competition is not that good, but just the movement, you know, you get movement, and he's moving pretty quick out there. So happy for him having a strong performance. Of course, offensive lineman of the week a couple weeks ago in the conference. So that line's coming together. Matt McCoy, talking to people, there's people that think he's the best NFL prospect on the entire offensive line. I mean, I've heard that said because he's so athletic, so twitchy. People really, really feel good about him. He could also play tackle. I think with Markel Bell, you're seeing him being identified as that 6th best lineman, which if he's that, him getting up to speed, maybe if there's a guard injury down the road that takes a while, God forbid, you could move Jalen Rivers to guard, have him at left tackle and do things like that because of what he brings you on top of being the back, you know, the 3rd tackle if a tackle goes down. So excited to see what Markel Bell's continued development looks like. I think he's still going to play against USF would be my guess. I think they're going to continue to work him in as much as they can depending on everything else to just get more reps and be ready to be that guy when Jalen Rivers is not available to step in or whoever else. Because he has the IQ, he has the length, he has athletic ability more than I think people thought. He needs to improve his hands, just get more stronger, more powerful. He has natural power, but using his hands with more technique, I think will unlock some of that power, some timing stuff. He just needs to play more. I think in a perfect world, he would have been redshirted like in the old school. Those days are gone. He's got to play, speed up the process now. Like I said, very happy to have Rivers and Cooper back because they're 2 extremely impactful players. I think you still see Bell get on the field in some form or fashion and continue to get put up to speed so you could rely on him as you get into conference play.
Yeah, no, this was a USF defensive line that gave Bama issues, especially in the first, 2.5, 3 quarters of that game. So they've got to be ready. And I think that them kind of forecasting that with Rivers sitting out, right? And obviously Cooper, that injury happened last week, but they understand that this is not a pushover in terms of the defensive line. Kevin Patrick coaching that group. So really big matchup for this offensive line, which, we'll get into it, also has been really good in pass protection. And I think some people would say, well, they haven't been extremely dominant in run blocking, but again, they've got to take what the defense is giving them, and the passing attack has been very deadly. So,
and the running stats are there. I mean, they completely dominated they completely dominated Ball State running the football, did better against them in that department than Georgia did by a significant amount. So, dominant rushing performance in the second half. Miami hopes to continue to improve and build on that. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, I want to talk about the Beacon Adjusters Player of the Game. Beacon Adjusters, tremendous partner of the CanesInSight podcast. Cane fan owned and operated. Was your home or business damaged by a recent hurricane? Did your insurance deny your claim or not pay you enough to make repairs? Either of these is a yes. You need to contact Beacon Adjustors Group. Beacon Adjustors Group experts can help you get your insurance claim settled and make sure you get fully paid. Again, Cane owned and operated. They don't get paid, just like Anez and Levine. They don't get paid until you do. So those are the people to call. 954-466-4224 or info@beaconadjusters.com. We lead in your time of need. So the Beacon Adjusters Player of the Game is going to be Simeon Barrow. 4 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. It felt like more. This player was a guy that we talked about a lot in the offseason because he flirted with Missouri. Obviously, glad Miami was able to keep him. He's an impactful guy, super twitchy, looks like an NFL kind of guy. Maybe not a first-round pick, but a guy that will be wearing an NFL uniform. Just waiting for that breakout. I think today was the day, or Saturday, I should say, was the day. They just really could not hold him down. Again, 1.5 tackles for loss seems light for all the havoc that he caused. Super twitchy. He's always working, using his hands. I think against a Ball State that's undermatched, a guy like him that's not physically overwhelming is just going to outwork him with quickness and with hands.
Quick feet, man. I mean, that pops on the highlights, on the tape from the other day for sure. And Coach Crystal, I made a post about it on social media earlier. He said that Simeon's dad was in town and that we might need to get him down to every game and have him in the stands every game because he thinks that gave him a little more juice this week. But much deserved. And it's awesome to see how many different guys are stepping up on this line, D, right? I mean, we kind of projected this preseason that it would be a very deep room, but Tyler Barron has been a beast in every game. Elijah Alston has been awesome. And now Barrow really getting into the mix there. These are 3 guys, and we're not even talking about Ruben Bain, who's been injured, right? So that room's going to be fun to watch as the season progresses, without a doubt. And I will say, D, last week in our predictions, I had Jacoby George as my prediction for Player of the Game. I don't think that was very far off in saying that. If he scores that one that he goes out of bounds, he's probably the pick here, right? But he looked fast, man. I think he looks faster than he has the last, this first few years. And look, guys don't always get faster, but I think that's just weight room work. And again, we know he's had the talent, but his ability with the ball in his hands after the catch gives Miami, something really, really nice in this offense.
Yeah, he missed a lot of time in camp, so he's just getting acclimated, more reps, better shape, just making up for lost time. Sam Brown also missed time, had more missed opportunities in this game. He's probably the next one, I think, to really get going. They're going one by one. Restrepo, Horton, George gets going. Now I think Brown's the last one, but I do think you will see him going. But that was a great call, Pete. On the Beacon Adjusters Player of the Game, could have been George, but we're going with Simeon Barrow for how disruptive he is. By the way, I said hurricane for Beacon Adjusters. If your house has been damaged by a storm, same thing. Call Beacon Adjusters. They don't get paid until you get paid, and they lead in your time of need. All right, so let's bash some teams here. We've been praising the Canes. We've been talking good about the Canes. Let's bring some negative energy into the podcast and talk about the Florida Gators and the Florida State Seminoles, both of whom lost this week in pretty embarrassing fashion. Florida getting beat by Texas A&M. Game was over at halftime with Texas A&M's backup quarterback. Connor Wegman was out of the game. Didn't matter. Gators could not stop the pass or generate any kind of pass rush. Lagway was ineffective. Mertz was extremely ineffective as well. Both of them had turnovers. Then Florida State just inept against Memphis, Mike Norvell's old school. Paid him $1.3 million to come down and beat them, and beat the coach that they paid $10 million for.
That was a banger tweet the other day.
You like that one? Yeah, it did pretty good. But embarrassing performance for the Seminoles. And the third in a row, 0-3. This one I think is the worst because at home, it's the team that you pride Norvell from, and they're better than you. So a lot to feel bad about if you're a Noel fan or a Gator fan. And part of college football is so great is you don't just celebrate your own team, you celebrate the failures of teams you don't like. Love that more than anything else. Maybe the karma will come back to us soon, but we've been bad forever. So, I mean, how much bad karma can we have? If it happens, it happens. I'm just going to enjoy it while I can and rip on these guys.
Yeah, here's the tweet I was referencing if you guys didn't catch it, which is basically what D just said here. But it's ugly, man. I love listening to these Noel podcasts after the game. It's great content.
I think what really gets those podcasters and all the fans feeling down is the future doesn't look very bright. And I think what you're seeing is the importance of recruiting high school and portal, really, and just having
it's got to be a good mix. It's got to be a real good mix.
And you got to have a good recruiter, which Mario Cristobal's proven to be. You got to have a great NIL, which Canes Connection is proven to be. CanesConnection.com/CIS. Link is in the description. Links on the website. When you have that all working together, you can acquire talent in a way that's sustainable. And it's not a going out of business sale like FSU had last year. You have a great season. You hit on a bunch of portal guys, but then you're back to being a terrible, terrible team, which Norvell was the first 2 years of his tenure at Florida State. Losing seasons both, now heading to potentially another losing season. Florida, again, 1-2, only beat Sanford, an FCS team. Not looking very good. So just, to me, I take 3 class snapshots. Mario's had 3 classes, 1 transition class, 2 full classes. And if you look at Miami's roster, I mean, Anez Cooper, excellent player from the first class. Matthew McCoy, excellent player, is on his way to be an excellent player from the first class. Isaiah Horton would be the best receiver on FSU and would be right there with Wilson on Florida. They could certainly use him on either of those teams. He was in that class. Wesley Basaint, an outstanding linebacker, has emerged as that. Mod Moten, productive inside. Jaden Harris, again, would play on either of these teams at safety. So a lot of players in that transition class, they're just doing a phenomenal job for the Miami Hurricanes. The year after, Ruben Bain, Francis Malino, I mean, they're better than anybody on either of these teams by a good margin. Other guys that you see making plays.
Mark Fletcher,
outstanding. It's a different level of high school recruiting. And then now you have a higher level of portal recruiting as well. Freshman class. I mean, these guys are playing ball. OJ Frederick starting on what's one of the better pass defenses in the country right now statistically. So when you go back and look at UF by comparison, 3-year snapshot, you got Eugene Wilson, who's a very good player. Receiver would play anywhere. Shamar James, you got in that transition class, good player, maybe off to the NFL, maybe trying to just transfer and get out of there. But he is a good player. Arlo Sportingham, average tight end, had a catch against us, 4 yards. I don't see anything particularly special with him, but he's the best of this bad crop. Then you got some DBs that are playing for you, Devin Moore, Jakeem Jackson, Jordan Castell. But the Gators have the worst pass defense in the country. I believe they're ranked 124th right now after being in the 120s last year. So, yes, you have players playing for you, but it's the worst pass defense in the country, and they're part of that problem. Of course, you do have DJ Lagway. That is the star of your picture right now if you're the Gators, but you just played Mertz over him. That could not sit well. He has no protection. He has no playmakers aside from Wilson, who's been nicked up. So is he going to be there long term, or is he going to be poached by a team like the Miami Hurricanes or Texas A&M, which just beat you? It's going to be very hard for them to hold on to DJ Lagway. And if they can't hold on to him, what do they have to hang their hat on in 3 years of high school recruiting? Seminoles-wise, is even worse. I mean, you're looking at the 3 leading receivers are seniors, and they stink. No one's been able to unseat DJU of the young guys, so those guys aren't even good enough to knock him off the perch. The 2 leading rushers are seniors, average players. Azaria Thomas, a pretty good player. Maybe he leaves. The entire offensive line is seniors, and they stink. You lose 3 of your defensive linemen at least. No good ones come back. Marvin Jones is the guy that theoretically would come back, and he's got a half a tackle for loss in 3 games. So yes, I'm ripping FSU and UF here, but Pete, you're someone who gives a devil's advocate approach. Am I missing in my evaluation of their young players through 3 recruiting classes?
No, I mean you are, and I guess you could look at it and say, at least with Florida, maybe certain guys aren't being developed. It doesn't look like the coaching staff has done a great job over there of doing that. Florida State, they had so many guys drafted last year. Obviously, a lot of portal guys that it's tough to say that the staff can't coach, but the results are what they are. They're 0-3, and they haven't. It's funny, they've lost all 3 of these games, and it's not like the teams that they've played have come out guns a-blazing and playing like a perfect game of football either. So from a talent standpoint, obviously I was higher on Florida State than I was Florida before the season. And I think both of us were, especially on the defensive side of the ball for Florida State. But yeah, I mean, they aren't. The thing is, you look at some of these guys that we're mentioning for Miami from that class from 3 years ago. It's like, even if these guys aren't first-round picks, there's a lot of guys who are very nice foundational pieces for the team that are legit starters at the P4 level, right? Like that can go start at a lot of top 15, top 20 teams right now, right? So you don't need to have. Not everyone has to be a Ruben Bain, right? That is a hit and a half, right? But a Jaden Harris wasn't a guy I don't think a couple years ago when he was a freshman that people were saying like, man, this guy's going to be a future starting safety for us, right? I mean, look, we're excited about his potential, but he's developed and that's on him. He has the physical ability, but like he's turned himself into a really, really good player here. We're 3 games into the season, but I think that's the issue. When you look at Florida and Florida State's rosters, you don't seem to even really have many solid players. So I don't think you're off in what you're saying here.
Yeah, what I see is a team that is old and bad. 2 teams that are old and bad. That's the best way I could describe it. So if you're young and bad, well, these young guys will get old, right? I remember, Campbell for the Canes, the John Campbell, the right tackle against Florida. And Manny said after that game, the young players eventually become old players. We're here almost 5 years later, and he's actually finally become a good player. He plays for Tennessee, certainly better than the UF has on their offensive line. So, yes, sometimes young guys, when you're playing young guys, do become good, but these guys are old and bad. That's the problem with Florida. Their offensive line is old and bad. Florida State's offensive line is all seniors, and they're bad. The defensive line for Florida State's going to be gone next year. All you bring back is Marvin Jones, and he's been pretty bad really his whole career since he's been in college. He's coasting off his high school stats. Florida, I don't see their youth that has any talent. Shamar James leaves. What do you have left? It's really all about Lagway for him, and he can go. And we'll see if Glenn can get it going for FSU once they do eventually bench DJU. But you wonder, how's DJU still a starter? What's Glenn doing or not doing in practice? So what you're seeing here with Florida and Florida State is a talent acquisition problem, a talent of the roster problem. And the people in charge, their biggest weakness, among others, is talent acquisition. So how do you fix it? Maybe you fire Napier, then you got to start all over again. Norvell's making $10 million a year. You can't even fire him. Is he going to recruit his way out of this problem? What's the solution? They're in a very, very tough position because the biggest weakness right now is the roster. And you have 2 guys who are very bad at building rosters, tasked with fixing this problem. So Miami's in a very good place. They got to take care of their own business and beat the number 2 team in the state here at UCF. Maybe number 3 if UCF is considered better. Certainly Florida and Florida State aren't anywhere near that conversation. So Miami's got to take care of business on Saturday and take care of business when they ultimately play FSU and show that there's tiers to this, and Miami is in a tier of its own when it comes to the state of Florida.
Yeah, and just real quick, just wrapping up, you look at Florida State's situation. Florida, it's a different story. Napier's going to be gone. There's too many things to predict. Norvell's not going to get fired this year, right? But like looking at next year, they're obviously going to probably have to bring a quarterback in through the portal. What do you have to show for that quarterback, right? You look at Miami recruiting Cam Ward, and like you had a really big time offensive line coming back that you had the numbers to back that up. You had the top two, returning receivers in the ACC coming back. Like, there was something to at least build on there. If it keeps trending how it's trending right now for Florida State, it's going to be a tough sell for Norvell to bring someone in there this next year at quarterback who is going to be a real difference maker. And again, it's so far out. There's a lot of things that can happen, right? So this could get clipped and Florida State could bring in a big time transfer next year. But I'm trying to figure out where the building blocks are there for that program right now.
Yeah, look, we'll be cheering, I guess, in the rest of the season. We'll keep you posted on the CanesInSight podcast about all their failures, and you can read about them on the CanesInsight.com message board. 7 million posts and counting. Got a thriving Gator Tears thread, thriving Knowles threads, millions of views between those two threads, and just tons of responses. That is where you want to be to share the Gators' misery. But want to go through a segment that I love, the Miami Hurricane Team Store post of the day. Miami Hurricane Team Store that had a great autograph signing this week and the Sunday prior to that. They have a ton of events with student athletes and fans, bringing them together. Just unbelievable opportunities to meet these players. Miami Hurricane Team Store, the official store of Athletics. So where else are you going to get it? And if you're not local, MiamiHTS.com, either local or in person. You use promo code INSIGHT20 and you get 20% off your first item. Again, INSIGHT20, like CanesInSight 20. You get 20% off your first purchase, whether it's online or in the store. So we're going for the Miami Hurricane Team Store post of the day. And it's about Damian Martinez and really focused on, the idea that he only had 3 carries for 3 yards against Ball State when everybody else was putting up stats. Miami 04 had the original post, but the thread's been going crazy. It's kind of trying to figure out what's going on with Damian Martinez. Has had moments to make his stats look pretty good, but he's also at times where he's been bottled up. Pete, one thing that you mentioned before, talking to scouts, was a concern that I've heard now echoed talking to football people here after the beginning of the season, is the transition from being in I formation and really running downhill to standing next to Cam Ward a lot of times and having a different sort of buildup.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have much of a buildup at when you're running out of the shotgun there, right? You when you're in the single back or I formation behind the quarterback, you have the ability to build up some speed and kind of see what's in front of you, right? I mean, I think that's what we're seeing with because there's no question about the fact that he's 230 plus, can run. I mean, you talked about the long runs that he was busting off during fall practice. We've seen it on tape, at Oregon State as well. So he's not slow. He's got the size, right? He's a physical back. But I think there might be a bit of an adjustment happening in terms of, because look, when he gets the ball, you see him kind of trying to be patient back there, trying to find the hole, open up. And it just seems like, it just hasn't happened consistently yet for him. Right. So is that him just starting to, needing some time to get used to running out of the shotgun? I mean, maybe it is. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much on it, but obviously there is some sort of adjustment period going on for him.
Yeah. And I think the way Miami's playing on offense on top, you mentioned the fact that he's not having those downhill runs. You're playing very tight splits. I was talking to people. That's something that keeps coming up, with those tight splits. Really the opposite of what Tennessee does and what USF does to a certain extent. With those tight splits, you were able to handle games better. So when you have stunts and loops, there's less gaps between the offensive linemen. So you're able to pick those up better, protects Cam Ward from pressure coming right up the middle, which when Cam Ward's your most important, best player, that is a big factor. Negatives, if you're like a big defensive lineman, like you're playing Alabama with those tight splits or Georgia or something like that, the 2 gap anyways, you're closer together, so the gaps are smaller. So that's something that maybe doesn't fit as well against an Alabama or Georgia. Those are typically, they struggle more when they're spread out and they have to move their feet a lot more, as opposed to just being able to mash and go right ahead and create a muck. One thing that's been pointed out is that Miami really has not done a lot offensively. Shannon Dawson thinks today hit 10 to 15% of their playbook. I think run scheme wise, they're in very, very vanilla. I think you'll see more outside zone, just more outside runs in general, more motion, just more creativity in the run game. Because right now Miami's pretty basic on the run game, and they've been effective doing that. I think you'll see more. We had a whole podcast about duo blocking versus zone. which you can check out in our archive. Just Google football school or YouTube football school, CanesInSight, and that'll pop up great episodes about zone blocking versus duo. Zone blocking going to favor more wide splits because this gives you guys more room to operate in those zones as opposed to duo where you're more double teaming. So, you know, we'll see how this whole thing progresses. I tend to believe that Martinez is going to be fine. I think when you get a real game, competitive game, hopefully not too competitive, but when you have more of a competitive game, the plan of playing Damon Martinez in the first and the fourth, and then using Fletcher in second and third, you'll see that come to fruition. And the plan is, the idea and the vision is that's when Martinez is going to start turning those 3 and 4 yard runs into 15, 20-yard runs with a punishing finish because the defense is just tired of tackling him.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not too concerned with it, D. I think as we get into the meat of the schedule here, he will be, you know, he'll show his ability at full force. And look at the bright side. He hasn't taken many hits. He's fresh. He's healthy, right? So that's the beauty of having the sort of backfield that Miami has with the depth that they do have there.
Absolutely. So excited to dig into this. We got a lot more analysis of USF coming up. We'll have some USF experts on, some Canes experts breaking down the film. Of course, Mike Ryan coming on Wednesday for the Wednesday show. A lot to talk about this week, a lot to celebrate. It was a very, very good win. Biggest blowout in FBS history. So a lot of positives, but at the same time, things you want to clean up before you get into these real games. Now we're past the cream puff portion of the schedule. Now you're talking about real games, real teams, and I'm very excited to come daily.
No, wait, listen, D, they're not past the cream puff part of the schedule yet. They still have Florida State later in the season. So
love that. Love that. Very true. The third or fourth or fifth best team in the state. So again, stay tuned to CanesInSight. We'll be coming on daily here to give you the latest with the Canes, man. So appreciate everybody, and go Canes.
Go Canes.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you. And nobody do it like CanesInSight. 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 It's CanesInSight.